Okay, so here we have a list of widgets, some generic ones. We have a heading widget. Let's now create another widget that's it's a little bit more challenging. Let's create a list widget. Right? So a list widget will use a text area where we can type all the items in a list. Right? It will take this text area content. It'll be one item per line in the text area, and so what it'll do is it'll parse this text. It'll break it up into multiple lines, right, into an array, and then it'll iterate over it and generate all the line items in a list. All right, so let's take a look at how we could do that. So first of all, let's create a component for this. So we'll do new component, so this will be list widget, and let's render here. Let's import React from React, and this will be export a function called list widget that will take as argument a widget. And we'll render in here. We'll return as content. We'll return h3 list widget. Okay. All right. Everybody good? All right. So let's see if we can render this. Let's add an instance of a list widget here, just for testing purposes. So this will be list widget 1 of ID 2, and the type is list. All right. Now it doesn't render, obviously, because so what's happening here, right? When it gets this is loaded, the reducer generates. Hasn't received any actions, so it returns the default state and the store is modified. When the store is modified, all the containers are notified, right? That something happened, that the state has changed, and the containers will use the connect function to run the two mappers. One of the mappers is going to extract from the state only the piece of information that it needs, and it's going to return an object that maps from the state to some property that is going to be fed into the component, right? Into the component that we're connected to. Right? That component, in this particular case, is the widget list component. The widget list component iterates over those components. And as it iterates over those components, it checks the type of the widget. Depending on the type of the widget, it loads another component. Right? In this particular case, it's the list component, which we don't have. Right? We don't have the type here. We just created it, but we haven't rendered it here. Right? So let's add it as a new one, and this will be list. If it's a list component, we want to render the list widget, not the heading widget. And we're going to pass the widget itself down to the component themselves, right? And we have the update widget here. It's also going to be passed along to this new list widget, right? The update, so that it can notify back if something changed in the list component. Everybody okay? All right, excellent. So now it should render. There it is. There's our list widget at the very top of our array. Being a list widget, one of the attributes that the list widget might want is that being a list widget, we might want what the list items are. And the list items might be it'll be just a long string. It'll be a long string separated, well, where the items are going to be separated by new lines, /n, right? Because that's how we're going to represent it in a text area. Right? You're going to be able to type one line item per line in the text area. Yes? So this might be something like item 1, new line, item number 2, new line, and then item number 3. Yes? Right? That's how we're going to store it in the database. Right? just as a plain string. Okay, so there it is. Let's see if we grab a hold of it in the list widget. In the list widget, we have the entire widget is being passed to us, including that list item, right? All right, so we could presumably render here widget.list items. Let's see if we grab it. There they are, item 1, item 2, and item 3. Okay, so we do have it down here, right? We could even render it in a text area, right? We could say text area, right, and say that the value of this text area will be widget.listItem. Okay, there it is. There's our text area with the list item. What's it complaining? This will be rendered. Oh, okay. So maybe should we render it like that? We could render it this way too. It doesn't like that either. Use default value or value properties instead of what? Isn't that what I did? Without on change. Okay, there will be an on change in a minute. Right, we'll do that in a minute. All right, so let's make this look a little prettier. Perhaps we can do a class name as a form control, right? So that it renders as a block item, and you can see all the items one item per line. Everybody okay? All right. So we can render it this way, or we can also, in addition to, we could have perhaps down below a preview of what this would look like, right? And this would be what? This would be a UL, and that we're going to dynamically iterate over this array or this set of items. The way we could do that is we could take the list items, and convert it into an array. Right? One easy way to convert it to array is that we can use split. Split will parse the array and split it on whatever character we tell it to split it on. Right? So we said we're going to split it on the new line. So split that one single line into 3 items, an array, and then we can then just map it. Right? We can iterate over that array, right? Which is going to return to us an item and an index, right? Which we can then just we can then use to generate our line item. Right? So we can generate here our line item. I guess we don't need the curly brackets. It'll be just parentheses. So we can just return line item whose key, right, is equal to index, and the content of the line item is the item, just the item, right? These are just plain old string, right? Okay. So there it is. So those are the line items being rendered. Okay. We'd like to be able to do on the fly, perhaps, that as we type and change the line items, right? If I enter, several line items down below, we don't have an on change. We need to change that. We need to notify that the state has changed, right? You have a question? Where you have this item here? Yeah, what's above it, is that's going to return that item, right? So yeah, this item here is this item here, which is just a plain old string, right? So this generates an array of strings, yeah? And so these are each one of those strings that are being passed to us as a string, and we're just filling in, rendering the literal string as part of that line item. Map is what's iterating over that array, right? So map is going to iterate over this array, and as it iterates over the array, it passes, calls a function, whatever function we give it. In this case, that function takes 2 arguments, the first one being the actual item that we're iterating over, and the second argument is 0, 1, 2, 3, the index of each one of those items. Okay? All right. And I'm using just a syntax that I don't need to say return. Right? These parentheses allow me to use a reduce syntax. If these were curly brackets, I would have to explicitly say return. Right? Here, if I say curly bracket and curly bracket, right, it's going to complain, and I would have to say return. That's it, right? Right. So the parentheses give me an implicit return. Again, that's all ES6 syntactic sugar that we're added. Okay. Okay. So we have the line items. And what we'd like to be able to do is, as we type and add new items, maybe that preview should populate on the fly. Okay? So what we could do is that on change, we would like to grab the value of the text area and then pass it to update widget. Right? So we'll need here a let text, right? So that we can bind it here. We can bind it and say ref. The node, we can pass it and bind it to the text node. Now we have access to the low-level JavaScript DOM element in the form of this text variable, so that when we do an on change, right, we can say, hey widget, your list items, right, are equal to whatever the text dot value is. Okay, so we're going to grab whatever you typed, whatever you typed on that text area, and we're going to populate the widget's list item. We're going to change it, and then we're going to notify update widget, and pass in the widget. I'm sorry. This is a function, right? This is all inside of a function. Okay. Widget, no, widget. Okay. So again, this is going to be sent over to the reducer. The reducer is going to generate a new object. It's going to look for that particular widget. It's going to take that new version of a widget that I just passed here. It's going to generate a new state. The new state is going to be propagated to the container. The container is going to map it. It's going to grab the widget from the state. It's going to map it to the widget, and then it's going to pass it back to us. Yes, we do not maintain the state of this widget. Okay, we might change the local state, right? But the DOM doesn't know anything until it gets passed to us by the container. All right, excellent. So let's try it out. So now I can change. Notice that immediately it's trying to render the item there, right? So this would be item number 4, right? And new item as I type. So it's a nice preview that it shows me exactly what this would look like at some point, right? And I think one of the challenges in the assignment is that you have a master preview switch, right? That if you click on the preview, it gets rid of everything and it only shows the previews, right? So that you would see what this page would look like from a student's point of view, right? Not from the faculty's point of view. Okay, right? And we can take a look at that in a minute. But everybody okay? Are we good? So one last thing that I would like to consider is maybe choosing whether this should be a numbered list or an unnumbered or unordered list, maybe with a checkbox, right? That if you can check whether it's ordered or unordered, right? So let's play around with that next.